with my journalist hat on, I was thinking if I had to go and cover the party conferences this year, I would only do it if covering it meant taking along those sheets that you used to throw down over corpses, because that's what I think these conferences need covered by. So I was feeling very cynical about it, and then Keir Starmer's come out and made an announcement about a great British energy company that under a Labour government he would lead the way on. And of course, inevitably, he has to talk about it being renewables. It's all about renewables. He says all the energy we need is in the tides, in the sky, in the sunlight, in the wind, and so on and so on. And it's all part of this green agenda. And Starmer says that Britain could be entirely switched over to renewables by 2030. That's like that's not even 8 years away. I can't see how that could conceivably be possible. And it also got me wondering just how green green energy is. It's an easy sell. It's easy to persuade people to give up fossil fuels and contemplate the switch to renewables at whatever cost, if you badge it all as green, good for the environment, good for the planet. I mean, who doesn't want things that are good for the planet and that are clean and green? You know, you might as well hold up a placard saying "Don't kick puppies." You know, who's gonna challenge you on that basis? It's ridiculously simplistic, and we'll get into that. But I really do wonder the extent to which green is green. But because of my archaeological backgrounds, I got thinking about copper, because all the renewables, particularly wind turbines, but solar panels also, require enormous amounts of copper. A recurrent figure seemed to be a 3.5 megawatt wind turbine has within it 4.7 tons of copper. That's per turbine. And obviously in a kind of a gigawatt field of wind turbines, you know, maybe 200 of these humongous, massive wind turbines, that's a lot of copper just for one installation, you know, to give you 1 gigawatt of power, which is like an old style gas-fired, coal-fired power station. And that's just in the structure. Then, because it's electricity that's being generated, that electricity has to be got to the grid, and that happens down more copper. And then obviously there's copper wiring in the grid, and all of these numbers start cycling upwards if you go to offshore, because the offshore installations are even bigger and therefore require even more copper. And I'm only, obviously they need also all manner of other things besides copper, but I just got thinking about copper, because I keep saying that there's nothing new under the sun, and the fact is we do here on this planet keep using and reusing and finding use for the same things over and over again. I know through personal experience of going there that 4,000 years ago copper was being extracted in vast quantities from the Great Orme mine at Llandudno in North Wales. You can go and visit it today. It's a tourist attraction. They were extracting copper from the Great Orme right up into the 1900s. You know, nobody had really given much thought to how long copper extraction had been going on there. That had just been overlooked. And there was a general assumption amongst archaeologists and historians that there wasn't any major metal ore extraction in these islands, of these British islands, until the Romans came. It was believed that they had brought the requisite technology with them. And it was only in the 20th century, when copper production at Great Orme was really winding down to an end, that it doesn't go on anymore. There was work being done on the creation of a car park and it let archaeologists have a bit of a firkle about and have a bit of a look at older evidence of older workings. And long story short, I've written about this and talked about this many times. At the Great Orme mine, archaeologists found a cavern, a subterranean cavern that had been created by miners 4,000 years ago, 2,000 years before the birth of Christ. After they had extracted the copper from it, they had laboriously and deliberately backfilled the big chamber that they had created. Who knows why they went to the trouble of doing that, but they did. And the archaeologists gradually emptied this out. And what they found was the largest prehistoric man-made cavern on planet Earth. All dug out by hand, by people, men and women and presumably children as well, with stone tools. You know, they had used stone and bone tools to dig out the copper. And it was calculated that that cavern and its associated tunnels would have provided 1,700 tons of copper. That's enough to make 10 million axe heads. 10 million axe heads, which would mean, so here in these islands where it had been assumed that there was no metal extraction until the Romans came, 2,000 years before that, Great Orme may well have been the largest industrial site anywhere in the old world. Copper, you know, the utility of copper had been identified then, because of course you mix copper, you can make things out of copper, you can make tools out of copper, but they're soft, and you know, axes and knives and whatever, they don't hold an edge for very long. But you mix copper with tin and you get bronze in ratios of about 90% copper to 10% tin. I mean, think about a Bronze Age world. Think about the ancient Greeks. Think about, you know, the siege of Troy. All of these things, men armed and armoured in bronze, they needed and would have known about these islands. And people who were in control of the copper, the tin here, would have been enormously powerful, because if you didn't have your own copper and your own tin, which is to say almost everyone in the old world, you had to establish relationships and links with people that did. So whatever our islands were called, Cassiterides or anything else, our islands would have been known to the ancient world as this crucial source. So I just find it fascinating that copper and access to it changed the world thousands of years ago, and it created a civilization that wasn't just in one country, it was pan-European. It changed the nature of the way in which people related to one another, all of those thousands of years ago. And lo and behold, as talk switches to renewable sources of green energy, copper is right there at the heart of it again. So that you might say that we're looking at a second copper age, and it begs the question: how much copper is actually out there? In the modern world, the prime sources of copper are Chile. Chile's at number one. So a lot of it's in South America, Chile, Peru. There's also a lot of copper in Australia. There's copper in Russia. There's copper in Mexico, so South America again. Copper in the US. So these are going to be it begs the question, doesn't it? What will happen in relation to the necessity to have and take control of a source like copper? So the people that happen to be in its vicinity, you might say they have some sort of an advantage, but they will certainly become the focus of everybody's attention. And it looks as though geologists have identified 2.5 billion metric tons of additional copper. So they know where that copper is, but it's still in the ground. 2.1 billion metric tons. So the discovery of copper in the ancient world changed the ancient world, but now we know where the copper is, and the exploitation of that copper in the modern world, well, it could change the world again if they really do go the way they're going, if the way that they're talking about going, minimal nuclear and all, Keir Starmer says Britain's going to go all renewable. That's a lot of copper, and that's got implications if you've got the kind of standard of living that we've got in the West, like say you live in a country like here, like Britain or the US, imagine people living that way. Every year, each person needs £40,000 weight of minerals. £40,000 per person. That's not just the things you own. That's creating the energy and all the things that you use and take advantage of around the world. So, for example, each of us in a year needs £34 of aluminium, £12 of copper, £11 of lead, £6 of zinc, £5 of manganese, and £25 of other metals. And there's 8 billion of us on the planet. And obviously, not by any stretch of the imagination is anywhere near every one of those 8 billion people living a kind of lifestyle that consumes that amount of natural resource from the planet. There's about 1 billion people on the planet that don't even have access to electricity. But let's imagine that all 8 billion people on the planet would like to have that kind of lifestyle. As Noel Gallagher famously said, I wouldn't want to be the man to tell 1 billion Chinese people they can't have a fridge. Everyone would like to be living that kind of lifestyle, but you've got to start thinking about what that means, because as I say, it's called green. We're looking at green agendas, which, as I said at the top, implicit in that is that somehow the future that we're imagining for ourselves and that we're being herded towards is better for the planet, better for planet Earth. Which brings us to the next thing. Exactly how green is it? Because it's evidently the case already that we're going to need even more of a lot of the metals and rare earth minerals that we already extract, and we're going to need to start exploiting other sources of rare earth minerals that to some extent we haven't needed before. Far less needed to exploit. And anywhere you go in the world, where lithium, for example, is being extracted. Now, we all know about the necessity for lithium in electric vehicles, electric cars, in batteries. The rechargeable batteries that are in your phone and your computers and everything else, and the electric batteries that are in cars. They're dependent upon lithium. And lithium's another rarity, and one way or another you have to get it out of the earth. And if you go anywhere in the earth where it's being extracted, if you go into China and you look at where it's being extracted, it's unbelievably pollutant. Anything that China extracts, they make a mess of the environment doing it. Whether it's coal or zinc or anything else, it's a toxic mess. The extraction of lithium and the processing of lithium that's gone on so far, just to produce the electric vehicles and the batteries that we have now, almost without exception, it's been incredibly intrusive on the environment. It destroys habitats, and it leaves behind toxic waste. That the rape of Mother Earth is supposed to stop. Well, the green future's predicated on just more mining. It's just burrowing down or stripping the skin off Mother Earth and ripping out yet more of what's there in the Earth's crust. And I just question the extent to which it's green. And sometimes I wish that the powers that be would just be more honest with us and say, we're going to do this, and it's going to make a mess, and it's not necessarily green, but we're going to do it anyway. And my mind goes back to that episode of Blackadder, where the Queen finds a sheep in Edmund's bedroom, I don't know, the night before his wedding or something, and she says, "It's not the sheep I mind, Edmund, it's the lying." Go ahead and do what you're going to do. I want to say to these people that are driving an agenda like the green agenda, get on and do it if that's what you want to do, but don't pretend it's something that it's not. Outlaw Josie Wales, don't piss down my back and tell me it's raining. It's the same sort of idea. I wish they wouldn't pretend that what they're doing is other than what it is, which is yet more intrusion and exploitation of Mother Earth, which they have the audacity to suggest that they care about. as though we're just supposed to accept that what they have in mind is going to be better for the planet than what's already happened to it. All over Africa, all over other parts of the world, all over China, people are being exploited and having their habitats and their living spaces corrupted and destroyed by the processes of rich people getting their hands on these materials. It's all about money. It's all about money at the end of the day. And so, here we are again. 6,000 years ago, man learned about the use to which copper could be put, and the use of copper changed the world. And after all this time, copper is going to be used again, a second copper age, to make yet more tools, you might say, that are supposed to make somebody's life better. And they will change the world, but will they change the world for good or ill? I don't know, but I have a hunch.